The most dangerous thing anyone ever did to you was make you need them. Not through cruelty, not through manipulation, though sometimes those were part of it, through something quieter and more insidious than either. Through the slow, ordinary process of becoming important to you, of becoming the person whose opinion you checked before you formed your own, the person whose presence you arranged your schedule around, the person whose approval you translated your thoughts into simpler language to obtain, the person you softened for, dimmed for, waited for, built yourself around in ways so gradual you never noticed the architecture changing until you tried to stand without them one day and discovered that something in your foundation had shifted. This is not a love story. This is a story about what love, or friendship, or belonging does to the shape of a mind when the mind allows it. Friedrich Nietzsche spent the first half of his adult life allowing it. And then he spent the second half paying a price so steep, so comprehensive, so devastating in its completeness that it looked from the outside like destruction. It was not destruction, it was surgery, the brutal, involuntary, agonizing removal of every dependency that had been preventing him from thinking the thoughts he was actually capable of thinking. And the thoughts that came after the surgery changed the world. His darkest lesson is not about suffering. It is about what suffering reveals when it has stripped everything else away. It is about the terrifying, liberating, almost violent discovery that the self you were performing for other people was never your deepest self. That the real one was being kept underneath it, quiet and compressed, waiting for the room to empty so it could finally expand to its actual size. Nietzsche called this becoming who you are. He meant it as an instruction, not a description. Because who you are is not the person you have been in relation to other people. Who you are is the person who exists when the relation is gone, when the audience leaves, when the mirror of other people's expectations is removed and there is nothing left to reflect yourself in except your own most honest thought. Most people never find out who that is, because most people never let the room empty long enough. Nietzsche did, not entirely by choice. The room emptied because the people left. Wagner left first. Salomé left, Paul Rée left, the university left, his health left, his readers, the few he had, lost interest. His sister stayed but transformed into someone who would eventually betray his ideas so thoroughly that the betrayal outlasted his life. One by one, the people and institutions that had given him a context for his identity disappeared, and he was left in rooms across Europe, in Sils Maria in summer and Nice in winter and Turin in the end, with his notebooks and his pain and the question that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Who am I when there is no one watching? What do I actually think when I stop translating my thoughts into language that other people can accept? What would I create if I was not managing anyone's comfort, including my own? The answer in his case was Zarathustra and the death of God and the will to power and the eternal recurrence and amor fati, and every other enormous, still reverberating idea that the comfortable, socially embedded version of Nietzsche could never have produced, because the comfortable version was always performing, always calculating the audience, always stopping just short of the edge because someone he valued was standing near the edge and might not follow him past it. When everyone was gone, he went past it. And that is his darkest lesson. Not that you should make yourself lonely. Not that relationships are traps to be avoided. Not that the human need for connection is a weakness to be overcome. The lesson is darker and more specific than any of those comfortable misreadings. The lesson is that there are thoughts you will never think while you are managing someone else's feelings about your thinking. There are versions of yourself you will never become while you are organizing your life around someone else's need for you to remain recognizable. There are depths you will never reach while you are maintaining the surface for the benefit of people who are comfortable with the surface and afraid of what is beneath it. And the question his life poses, the one that has no comfortable answer, is whether you are willing to find out what those depths contain. Even if finding out costs you the people who currently make your life feel livable. This requires understanding what Nietzsche meant by the herd, not as an insult, as a psychological description. The herd is not a collection of stupid people. It is a collection of people organized around shared values, shared assumptions, shared comfort zones, shared definitions of what is acceptable to think, say, want, or become. And the herd is seductive because belonging to it feels like love, the warmth of being included, the security of being understood. The comfort of not having to explain yourself because the people around you operate from the same basic framework, but the herd extracts a price for that warmth. The price is your edges. Every herd has a shape, and to belong to the herd, you must fit the shape. Which means your edges, the parts of you that extend beyond the shape, must be managed, softened, tucked in, not necessarily hidden, just made smaller, made less threatening, made compatible with the space the herd has assigned to you. And over time, if you belong long enough, if the belonging becomes the primary organizing principle of your life, you forget that you have edges at all. You forget that the shape you are living inside is not the shape you were born with. You forget that there is a version of you that exists outside the frame of their expectations. Nietzsche remembered, not comfortably, not gracefully, but with the specific anguish of a person who can feel the compression and cannot stop feeling it, and cannot make himself stop caring that he feels it. He wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra about the three metamorphoses of the spirit: the camel, the lion, and the child. The camel kneels. It loads itself with the heaviest burdens it can find: duty, obligation, the weight of other people's expectations, the moral frameworks inherited from tradition, the social contracts signed without reading. The camel carries all of it because carrying is what it has been taught to call virtue. And it carries it into the desert, which is what Nietzsche calls the loneliest place, the place where the transformation becomes possible. In the desert, the camel becomes the lion. The lion does not carry. The lion fights. It confronts the great dragon, whose name is Thou Shalt. Every scale of the dragon is a commandment, a value, a should, a must, a you are supposed to. The dragon represents the entire accumulated weight of inherited obligation, and the lion's task is to say no to it, not to replace it with something, just to say no, to clear the ground, to refuse to carry what was never truly chosen. But the lion cannot create. The lion can only refuse, and refusal is not enough. Refusal is necessary but insufficient. The final metamorphosis is the child. The child says yes, not the yes of compliance, the yes of a new beginning, the yes of someone who has cleared the ground and is now ready to build something on it that belongs to them. The child creates values instead of inheriting them. The child plays. Not frivolously, but in the deepest sense of play, which is the free expression of genuine nature without the management of an audience. Nietzsche believed this metamorphosis was the task of his time, and the task of every individual who wanted to live authentically rather than borrowed. But here is what the allegory does not fully capture, what it costs in human terms. The desert is not a metaphor for a peaceful retreat. It is a metaphor for the specific experience of losing the people who gave your life its shape. Wagner was the dragon Nietzsche loved before he could see it was a dragon. Salomé was the possibility of a companion who might have walked into the desert with him. The university was the camel's pack. His mother's pietism was the dragon's scale that said you must believe. His sister's nationalism was the scale that said you must belong. Each loss was a scale falling, and each scale that fell felt like loss before it felt like liberation. That is the part Nietzsche was honest about in ways that most philosophical systems are not. The liberation is real, but it does not feel like liberation when it is happening. It feels like grief. It feels like failure. It feels like the world is confirming your worst suspicion about yourself, which is that you are too much, too difficult, too strange, too intense to be kept by anyone. The abandonment feels personal before it feels philosophical. It feels like rejection before it feels like selection. Only later, sometimes much later, do you begin to see what the clearing made possible. There is a notebook entry from 1882, written in the immediate aftermath of losing Salomé and Paul Ray, where Nietzsche writes something that is almost too raw to read as philosophy. He writes that he is in the middle of the waves and that he must be careful not to lose his reason. That the pain is specific and anatomical, not metaphorical. That the night is long. That he does not know yet what this is for. He did not know yet. That is important. He did not have the philosophical framework ready that would later make sense of the loss. He did not have amour fati available to him as a comfort while the loss was happening. He was simply in it, simply suffering it, simply enduring the specific human agony of being left by the people who had mattered most, with no guarantee of what would come after and no certainty that anything would. The certainty came later. The framework came later. Zarathustra came later. First, there was just the dark. And this is perhaps the most important thing his story has to offer to anyone who is currently in their own version of that dark. Anyone who has just been left, or is in the process of being left, or can feel the foundations shifting beneath a relationship they built their stability on. The framework is not available yet. The meaning is not visible yet. The liberation is not felt yet. What is felt is only the loss, and the loss is real. It is not a test. It is not a lesson dressed up as pain. It is not the universe engineering your growth. It is just loss. And you are allowed to experience it as loss before you experience it as anything else. Nietzsche did not skip the grief to get to the philosophy. He went through the grief and came out the other side carrying the philosophy like something he had found in the wreckage, something that would not have been there if the wreckage had not happened. Now let us talk about the specific mechanism. Because Nietzsche was not simply saying that loss builds character in some vague, inspirational sense. He was making a precise philosophical claim about the relationship between dependency and self-knowledge. The claim is this: you cannot fully know what you think while you are managing someone else's reaction to what you think. The management happens so automatically, so below the threshold of conscious choice, that most people do not know they are doing it. You simply notice that your ideas sound a certain way around certain people. That you emphasize different aspects of your thinking depending on who is listening. That you hold back certain conclusions because you can already predict how they would land, and the landing would cost you something you are not yet ready to pay. This is not dishonesty, it is adaptation. And adaptation is what the nervous system does to maintain relationships, which are what the nervous system is designed to protect. You are not failing to be authentic, you are succeeding at being a social animal. You are doing exactly what your evolutionary inheritance designed you to do. But you are also preventing yourself from thinking all the way to the edge. Nietzsche called this the problem of the friend who is also a judge. When the person whose opinion you value is also the person who is going to evaluate what you produce. The production is compromised from the beginning, not destroyed, not made worthless, but pulled back from its furthest reach. Because you are writing, or thinking, or building, or creating with one eye on the door behind which the judge sits. And that eye changes everything. It rounds the edges, it softens the conclusions, it selects the more palatable of two equally true formulations. It makes the work good, but it prevents it from being great. Greatness, Nietzsche believed, requires the removal of the judge, not permanently, not as a way of life, but as a condition of creation. The work that changes something must be done in a space where the only question is what is true, not what is acceptable. And that space is very difficult to inhabit while you are maintaining relationships that have stakes attached to your conclusions. This is why the hermit produces what the socialite never can. Not because isolation is superior to connection, but because there are specific cognitive states that only become available when the social management mechanism is disengaged. When you are not tracking anyone's face for the signal to stop. When you are not calibrating your tone for someone else's emotional temperature. When the silence is complete enough that the only voice audible is the one that has been waiting to speak at full volume for years. Nietzsche heard that voice in the years after the abandonment, and what it said became beyond good and evil. But there is a shadow to this lesson that must be named, because the misreading of Nietzsche on this point has caused specific damage that needs to be addressed directly. The misreading is this: that Nietzsche is teaching you to discard people, that his philosophy licenses a kind of cold, self-serving independence that uses the language of authenticity to justify treating other people as obstacles to your development. That becoming yourself means abandoning your obligations, your relationships, your dependencies, without care for what that abandonment costs the people you leave. That is not what he is teaching. He is teaching something much harder than that. He is teaching that there are certain growths that cannot happen in the presence of certain relationships. That some dependencies, not all, not most, but some, are so structurally incompatible with who you are becoming, that maintaining them requires you to stop becoming. And that the honest, painful, sometimes devastating thing to do is to let those specific dependencies go. Not all connection, not all relationship. The ones that are quietly requiring you to remain smaller than you are. And he is also teaching something about the direction of the abandonment, because in Nietzsche's own story, he was not always the one who left. More often, he was the one left. Wagner did not need Nietzsche. Salomé did not need Nietzsche. The university did not need Nietzsche. He was the surplus person, the one whose intensity exceeded what the structure could hold. The one who loved too much, thought too far, felt too deeply, required too much depth in return for what was being offered. And that is probably closer to your experience too. You may not be the person who abandoned everyone. You may be the person everyone eventually found too much, too intense, too honest, too unwilling to pretend the conversation was sufficient when it wasn't, too reluctant to live inside the frame the relationship offered when you could feel yourself pressing against it constantly. If that is you, then Nietzsche's lesson is not about what you should do to other people, it is about what you should do with what has already been done to you, which is to refuse to let the being left be the last word. To sit down in the room that has emptied and pick up the pen and begin. Not because everything will work out. Not because the audience will arrive in time. Not because the recognition will come before the collapse. But because the work itself, the fully realized, uncompromising, nobody is watching version of your actual thinking and creating and building, is worth doing regardless of what it costs and regardless of who is there to witness it. Nietzsche wrote for a reader who did not yet exist. He sat in his pain and his solitude and his migraine and his broken heart, and he wrote sentences for someone who would be born decades after he was dead. And those sentences found their reader. They are finding their reader right now in you, in this room, in this specific dark that you are currently sitting in with the specific people who have left and the specific weight of the specific version of yourself that has not yet been allowed to fully exist. He is not telling you it will be easy, he is telling you it is possible. And that the abandonment, the thing that felt like the end, might be exactly the condition under which the real beginning becomes possible. You must be ready to burn yourself in your own flame. He wrote that. He meant it. And he meant it most for the person sitting alone in a quiet room, afraid of what they might become if they stopped managing everyone else's comfort long enough to find out. Stop managing. Start burning. What rises from that is yours, and it will outlast everything that left.